all y'all tuning in.
No, it gets
That-
There you
That's why I'm bald.
there's a reason why some people decide this ain't no fun.
Okay, it looks like we're live. I'm gonna post this over on Discord for our fine folks over there.
The best thing about doing it though, Brad, is you do all that hard work so people can yell at you for being on the take by whatever the moon-based Illuminati. So
It's all good.
Okay, look at that. Share it, send it, boom, publish it.
Oh,
We have Boria Zero, friend of the show, saying buongiorno. David Richards, ASL. Always a good one. Always a good one.
yes, please.
Cool. Yeah, look at that. We're the gears are spinning. All the fun times. I have Wills here as my wingman. It's been a while. He's filling in for me because I'm gone next week. As are you,
Me
Brad,
too.
right? Yeah.
vacation, huh?
Vacation time. So Willis is going to be on the horizontals. That's not even a thing. Horizontals. You know what? It's not even horizontal
Yes,
and
I
verticals. It's horizontals.
I wonder if people even know what that joke is, besides obviously coming from.
Every once in a while, we'll get somebody in the comment section getting the reference.
From the Outer Limits.
Yeah.
But-
It's great. I love it. I mean, we've talked about this before. Like, when Twilight Zone, had some amazing stuff, but when I was growing up, Outer Limits was always more my jam. Probably just because it
Yeah,
was
same
newer, But yeah, I always liked the Outer Limits better when I was a kid.
It is a bummer though that like, oh, you've got Coke, we've got Pepsi, like, so they really like. I mean, this is not like a new phenomenon of like, we got the faster and the more angry, like, because it's everybody's copying everybody's popular things, like everybody's in superhero movies now.
But have you seen the Twilight Zone movie
The original one that
from the 80s, I think, or maybe?
yeah, it was infamous actually, because it got Vic Moreau killed and a child and the actor. They were shooting a scene with Huey in one of the flashback things, and the the directors, they say that he pushed too hard. That was the end of his career. So
Yeah. And it wasn't even that great of a movie.
yeah, that's the terrible thing, right?
Yeah.
It's just like Stanley Kubrick, Eyes Wide Shut being his last movie. I mean, that's just like
He got killed because of the movie. That's why.
no, he was like, I'm out. I don't want to see the reviews. I'm done. That's what Stanley Kubrick did. You got to face that, Adam. I did 2001. And all this stuff, and I'm gonna be saddled with that's just
Hey, listen, right now, Eyes Wide Shut, 75% on the Rotten Tomato meter. That's
Which one
fine.
is that? It's from
That's
the
fine.
critics? Like, I care what critics.
That's from
I'm
the critics.
professional critics. I know how full of it professional critics are.
Audience score 73%. Okay.
Yeah.
I know I'm in the minority of loving it, but
I'm
hey,
also a
73%.
consumer, and I know how baloney we are. Come on, it's just that's just terrible. I mean, it's just like Coppola. How do you go from Godfather 1, Godfather 2, Apocalypse Now to what is it?
Godfather
Dracula.
3.
Well, Godfather 3 obviously was another horrible mistake, but I mean, it's just like
I mean, you're talking about Bram Stoker's Dracula.
all I know is it's just like let's bring it back to technology. Is like, yeah, you know what? 14 nanometer used to rock your world. Okay, let's do it again. Let's run it back and do it over again. It's been 5 years, sir. It's like
I would say if there's a director that's like that, it's Tim Burton. He's got some amazing stuff early on in his career, but then he just keeps doing the same thing over and over again, and it really grew old.
yeah, but I'm just saying it's just like a certain point, okay, well, whatever the naming marketing nomenclature aside, it's just simply it was not living up to, because those early 14 nanometer parts were spectacular but it just kind of like you just got to retire before you can't go out,
Yeah.
you can't, there's no farewell tour for you. So
Nobody wants to be Brett Favre.
Dreary or Spider in the YouTube chat says The Conversation, very underrated Coppola movie. Never seen it.
No, that was fantastic. You know, and they actually had an homage to that in the one with Will Smith and Gene Hackman, Enemy of the State.
Oh,
And that was who directed that? Was that a Michael Bay movie? Because it
no,
felt like a Michael
not
Bay
enemy
movie.
of the no enemy of the state, enemy of the state.
Oh, it was
1998.
Oh, I know. I'm sorry. I'm gonna have to piss people off again, but it was done by the better of the.
Tony Scott.
Yeah, it was done by the better of the Scott brothers. Yeah.
Not falling for it. Not gonna bite that one.
Classic,
Top
classic.
Gun, Enemy of the State.
Oh, actually,
Crimson
Can you
Tide.
grab something for me?
Just
Those
saying,
are all
there's
good.
Pretty
but
good.
different level.
Pretty good body of work there.
Crimson Tide is fantastic.
Yeah. No, they're just well done, really well done movies. So I just.
At my desk.
Yeah, we are going to talk about technology here. Obviously, Brad is here. He's busted his butt on the Radeon RX 6600 XT just so you could do your hot takes.
Hot
And
takes.
we are going to be talking a little bit about DDR5, although I am behind the curve a little bit on it, frankly, because it ain't here yet. But, you know, we're going to talk about it. It's going to be hotter, apparently.
Mm-hmm.
I have another prediction.
Well,
about
and also,
DDR5.
I mean, you know, we have that DDR5. I mean, the main topic is the thermal stuff. The Corsair was talking about, obviously. Spoilers. But I think we've also, since we've talked about it last, there's been some. You have seen some boards. I know I saw there was a board that updated recently, to like add DDR5 support, things like that. And remember, because we were talking about like, oh, is it too expensive to have both DDR4 and DDR5?
No, I
on
was
a
just thinking
board?
it'd be cool if you could update the BIOS UEFI on your DDR4 motherboard to add DDR5. That would be that's something I could sell.
And imagine how easy.
But I would not call it. It would be
I'm
called
sorry.
DDR5 Plus, but it's not actually DDR5. It's just a high clocked, low latency version of DDR4, but you call it Plus to make it sound like it's.
There you go.
And you just do
That's
it
like, what
long
was it,
enough to get
LTE
out of the
Plus?
country before the FTC comes after you.
LTE plus. Oh,
What,
God.
wasn't AT&T doing that? It's
Yep.
4G plus or whatever.
Yep. I don't know if it's AT&T or Verizon or somebody. Yeah. It's all dumb.
Pretty laid back today. It is Tuesday, I think. August 10th. Whenever you are ready.
Let's see. You know, I'm trying to still get all this ready. Okay. Yep. I think I'm ready whenever you are, Gordon.
Let
Go
me
for
test my mic. Prometheus.
it. What? Test your mic.
I'm just testing the mic. Prometheus.
Prometheus.
Sorry, just kind of. Man, that's just a bummer, right?
Yeah.
He's like, as a Warriors fan, it's like, yeah, what about that time you guys were up 3-1 and you lost? Yeah, okay.
Oh,
That's the same
God,
thing.
That was.
That's
I mean, come on. That was.
No,
that was
yeah,
rough.
I know. I'm with you. Prometheus was like, oh my God, just stop. And then you can make another one? Just stop. Just stop.
And then just call it Alien. They're like, you know what? We're not going to call it Prometheus 2. Nobody wants that.
That's the same thing. That was just like, it was a severe letdown after. I ever tell you I went to go see the original Star Wars midnight with a friend, and it was just like the entire place was so pumped.
I believe it. I believe
Oh,
that. That
hell
was
yeah.
discussed.
No, I camped out for Star Wars Episode 1, like probably not a full 24 hours, but like overnight. We
Wow.
lined up outside of the theater. They shuffled us in, a couple hours early. They had like trivia, they had like cosplay contests and all this stuff. And like every big thing, people were cheering and hooting and hollering. I think that's why I have a little more reverence for the episode 1, is because like that initial time, like everyone was just so excited and hyped for it that we kind of overlooked that. It wasn't that
Really?
great. Yeah.
Wow. I just can't reality distort that much because I will
Thing
tell
like
you.
that,
It's groupthink, man.
we're never gonna see that much hype for another movie or anything launch again. I don't think. I miss the old Star Wars launches. Halo 2 back when it launched. Halo
yeah.
3, those were awesome.
Those are multimedia events, man.
Well, the bad thing is in San Francisco, the bars close at 2. So when the time the movie is out, you couldn't even drown your sorrows in like a beer or something. It was just like,
Every time I've been to San Francisco, the bars might close at 2, but the bars actually close at like 7:30.
really?
Or they're
Where
yeah,
he goes.
around the opposites. They're very early.
Yeah, that. I mean, a bar, like, as in, Axel have a business license, not just, people standing around a 55-gallon drum burning stuff. That's not a bar here. So that's.
Okay, all right.
We have lost it.
we should
We're
start.
actually going to talk about computer stuff. Are you ready?
Yes, let's
I
do
don't
it.
even know anything about this, so this is good, Brad. You're going to talk about Radeon. I have no idea. I haven't paid attention. All I know is that's it.
All right, let's do it.
All right.
In this episode of The Full Nerd, Radeon RX 6600.
66.
All right,
XT,
there we go.
XT.
In this episode of The Full Nerd, Radeon RX 6600 XT review and DDR5 HADA.
I didn't know where to cut. That was funny.
Welcome to episode 187 PC of The Full Nerd. I'm your host, Gordon Mong, with co-host Brad Charkis.
Hello, Internet.
Oh, I was going to say Elena, but Elena is not here. And Patrick Murray, though, is controlling the horizontal and vertical.
Or as we said, called it in the pre-show, the horizontals. You know, if you just want to be quick about it, right?
That
Yeah.
could work,
Yeah.
since no one knows what it is anyway.
Yeah, I think they do. You know, if you have ever understood Gordon's reference of the horizontals and verticals, please say it in the comments now if you get it, because we're curious. We were talking about in the pre-show.
Did you ever? Well, I guess you probably never did. Did you ever actually have to adjust the horizontal or vertical back then? I'm not even going to say what it is. Let people figure it out.
Not in the traditional, you know, grab a screwdriver and and twist some knobs kind of thing. No, that I was also never as part of my career or anything. But my esteemed colleague Willis is here to shadow me for today, and I have something, Gordon, that I need to be presented with. We've talked about this for a while, but I've officially oh look at that, it's all fancy and brand new.
Is it a
Hold on.
WW? Oh, I can't. All right, I won't look.
Oh man, it's really taped in there. Oh, there we go. All right, cool. This is great for audio listeners. Gordon, you know, a couple months ago we had a big discussion about who was going to win. You know, what's the better movie, Alien or Aliens? You put a poll out there, and the people spoke. Alien is the better movie. So I've been presented the gold belt right here. I am the winner of this championship. For this one, I'm just gonna do the whole show like this, like they do in the wrestling, right?
Yeah, they never put on the belt, do they? They always wear it over their shoulder because it doesn't fit. I'm sure it's because Vince McMahon takes it back after the.
He probably
whole
does.
thing
He's
is
like,
over. It's
yeah.
well, come on.
The second they get off the stage, he's like, come on, give that back to.
It's just like George Lucas. He comes out, okay, turn in those lightsabers. You don't get to keep that.
I will say this.
George, I've done 9 movies.
This belt provided by a friend of the show, VC Jester, pretty good. It says it engraved with the full nerd. I'm right in quotes. World champion. So whoever is right in the future will get this belt. Right now, I'm right. Alien is the better movie. So
I see the smaller badge actually has a call out to Prometheus.
No, it just says worldwide dominator.
Covenant.
Global undisputed champ. So it's pretty good. You know, it feels good to be on top right now. You know, who knows if I will continue to be on top, but at least I'm there right now.
It was most people just voted against Aliens being the better movie because they just simply wanted to anger me, which is fine. You can have protest votes. They really did not actually like Alien more than Aliens.
Listen, hey, even if it's a technicality, winner's a winner. So.
That's true. I agree with that. I would not say.
Sorry, I can't hear you over the sound of all my bling, says Adam.
Yeah, no, it's
Exactly.
fine. I accept that. I lost, even though come on, and actually I have a moral high ground. I think because it just proves what can be very wrong about audience participation in something. So when they vote for things that clearly there's a clear injustice and they vote for it, that's our history is replete with that.
Well, we'll see in the future. One thing I think the audience wants to know about is about the Radeon RX 6600 XT. Is that the champ? Is that the 1080p champ right now? Brad, tell us all about it.
Well, the Radeon RX 6600 XT is not going to be claiming any awards anytime soon. At least not from us. How do I say this? it's a good graphics card for today's crazy market. Like it really is a creature of the times, hopefully. Uh AMD in the lead up to this hyped it up as an epic 1080p gaming card, and it very much is. It's $379, which is a lot of money for a 1080p graphics card. 5 years ago, I praised the Radeon RX 480 for delivering excellent 1080p gaming in 1440p, with solid high settings. That's basically what this card offers. 5 years later for twice the price. So it's really, really hard to fall in love with it. If you need a 1080p graphics card for a high refresh rate monitor, like by all means, tomorrow is the day that the stock drops. Go out there, try to get it. You can get this card for $379 right now. You'll be thrilled with it. But yeah, it's a disappointment in general. I guess I give it 3 stars because it exists, which, I mean, that's good these days. But yeah, at $380, it's just, yes, it does beat the RTX 3060, which is theoretically $330. And the real world is closer to 500 plus. But at $380, it's only $20 less than the 3060 Ti. In the real world, again, that card is going for $700 to $800. But if prices ever return to sanity, the 3060 Ti is definitely a better buy.
Yeah, well, there's we have your article that came out on PC World, digging into the benchmarks. You should go read it. Great article. Keith also did a kind of a companion piece. It's not a full review. I mean, it's kind of his take on 1080p gaming, how the 6600 XT falls in there, and his thoughts. Good video on our channel. Go watch it. But of course, the first thing a lot of people are bringing up is how can anyone even compare MSRP right now? Things are so inflated. But I mean, I think you just said it. There's the MSRP, but even at MSRP, even in the best case scenario, it's kind of a weird spot. And then of course, it just gets exaggerated from there. So yeah, it's a hard one. Oh
yeah, go ahead.
And to be specific, you reviewed the Strix. Sorry, what was the model again?
I reviewed the Asus ROG Strix 6600 XT, which charges an extra $100 and I think $70 over that. Its MSRP is $550, which for a 1080p graphics card, I mean, it's a very good card. It's very cool. You can hear the noise. It gets so cool by having the fans up high. But yeah, $550 for a 1080p graphics card. It's just making me wince.
Yeah, I mean, no, I get it. It's just sort of it's a bad situation, but and I think I've been saying this all year, though. I know people aren't excited, but can you really blame anybody? I mean, it's just the market situation right now.
Yeah, not whatsoever. I mean, at this point, it is what it is. AMD in press briefings with journalists tried explaining, memory prices have doubled. There are all these component shortages, et cetera, et cetera. Logistics are still crazy. But I mean, 379 is more realistic, I think, for what it actually is. I think NVIDIA's MSRPs are ambitious for what the world is today. I think AMD's is a bit more realistic, and it gets them more money, which, they've been trying to do forever.
Right.
They've been doing very well at it the past few years. And honestly, I think that Asus's ROG Strix MSRP is even more realistic. I think you will see these selling for more than $550 on the street. I wouldn't be surprised if this winds up being $600 or $700, and at least that high pricing lets most of that go to Asus and AMD rather than scalpers or, retailers who want more money. But it's still a bummer. The RX 5600 XT, which this card is replacing, offered the exact same thing at the time. Excellent 1080p performance. You can screw around in 1440p if you want. It'd be all right. That launched at $279. So $100 less than the MSRP of the 6600 XT. At $380, the 6600 XT basically splits the difference between the RX 5700 and 5700 XT. Did you actually grab that chart that Keith made, Adam?
I did. I can
Is there
flash
any
that
chance you
on
could put that
right
up?
now. Let me.
Yeah, so if you look at that, Keith basically took the 11 game average of the 11 games that I benchmarked it with, stuck the 6600 XT as 100%, and everything else is based off of that. The orange bars are 1080p performance, the blue bars are 1440p performance. And as you can see, the Radeon RX 5700 XT offers practically the same performance for practically the same price, whatever it's been 2 or 3 years later. So, that's not very inspiring. AMD would say this is the 6600, so it should be compared to the 5600. But in the real world, we're talking $400 graphics cards, and both of those are $400 graphics cards offering the same stuff. So it's hard to get excited about it. If you can find any of these cards at MSRP, obviously hop on them. That's, the theme of the year. But if for whatever reason the world straightens itself out, all these cards are available at MSRP. 3060 Ti for $20 more is clearly the much better buy. It's 20% faster at 1080p, 26% faster at 1440p. That's worth talking about. AMD pitched this as an epic 1080p graphics card, through all the marketing, through all the communication with the press. And they actually really specifically tuned the card for 1080p. So it has, as part of it, it's an RDNA 2 GPU. So it has AMD's new Infinity Cache, which kicks butt for all sorts of reasons. It's essentially an on-die cache that keeps the GPU from having to communicate out to the memory for certain amounts of the workload. The one on the 6900 XT and the 6800 series, that targeted 4K gaming, and those got 128 megabyte Infinity Cache. The 6700 XT targeted 1440p gaming and had a 96 megabyte Infinity Cache. AMD tuned the 6600 XT, which is again a $400 graphics card, in the best case scenario, for 1080p gaming. And it only gave it 32 megs of Infinity Cache. So a third of what you find in the 6700 XT. So you can tell kind of looking at these charts, the card performs much better at 1080p or better at 1080p than 1440p because Infinity Cache is tuned for that. However, if you want to bump the resolution up to 1440p, because the cache is tuned for 1080p, it has a successful hit rate, they call it, is much lower. So it needs to start going out and talking to the GDDR6 memory much more. But one of the benefits in this case, maybe sort of a hindrance for the way AMD is configuring RDNA 2 cards is they become much more power efficient because using Infinity Cache lets them use smaller memory bus widths to communicate to the GDDR6. And so once you bump it up to 1440p, it's not getting the as full as a hit rate as it does at 1080p. And AMD only outfit this card with a 128-bit bus, which is very narrow. So yeah, performance falls back quite a bit at 1440p. It seems like it does when you enable ray tracing as well. I need to do more testing. Ray tracing is also very memory bandwidth intense. Just for reference, the 6600 XT has a 128-bit bus. The 5700 XT had a much wider 256-bit bus. So as you can see, it's 98% of the performance of the 6600 XT.
Well, question I have. So that's weird and a bummer about 1440p. But say, you know what, somebody's on 1080p. 1080p rules the world. They're going to stick there. Mm-hmm. They have a high refresh rate panel. Could this, can you at least maybe guess what this does for 1080p gaming in 2, 3, 4 years? Like, will that continue, or will that become a problem there as well? Or is it always just going to be good at 1080p?
I think it'll always be. I wouldn't be worried about this for 1080p at all. It has 8 gigabytes of GDDR6 memory. It has that Infinity Cache that's tuned specifically for that resolution. And I think it'll be fine for 1080p, even high refresh 1080p. It's kicking butt for that right now. Like, really, the 6600 XT is really, really good at one thing. It's really, really good at high refresh rate 1080p gaming. If you're going to bump up to 1440p, go for the 3060 Ti if you can find one. If you're not having a high refresh rate monitor, if you have a 60 hertz monitor, I would spend much less money than this and get a cheaper option if you can find one. So this is like that one niche for it, and it does it really well.
How high of a refresh rate can you hit? You got a feel for 240, 360 up and higher, or just sort of where's it run out of gas?
If you're playing esports, I think you could get up like that. I didn't, test the outer limits of that. Actually, we have the review that went up today, and I have 2 more going up this week. So we're gonna have evaluations of a bunch of different cards going up soon.
I haven't looked at the reception the card has gotten out there, but I do wonder. It's Groundhog Day, because every time there's a new card launch, everybody just does their frowny face. But I'm looking at eBay, and a stupid 1063 gig is $250 your best offer, right? So,
yeah,
I don't know. Some of the belly aching is. I know people are grumpy, but sometimes it's just like, man, it's a terrible situation. Yeah, look at Zotac, 1060 card, 6 gig is $340. Buy it now, right? And then here's. I know people are, oh my God, it's $500, but look, Radeon RX 480 8 gig, $340. Come on. Yeah. That was like, what, $100 at a certain point? So, no, I understand people want to be angry, but sometimes I just think the price has to be separated from it, because it's, you sort of, would people rather have you buy some older moldy piece of junk, or, better to get a 6600 XT, so.
Yeah, I totally understand that. And it makes it really weird to review graphics cards these days, to be honest, because I'm very much aware of that. Like, I tried to balance my review to say, hey, man, this pricing is a bummer. 5 years later, you're spending $400 to get great 1080p. It used to cost $200. That being said, with the world being what it is today, if you have been struggling to find something, you can find one of these for $379. Yes, it's a bummer that it costs that much, but go get it, because you're not going to find it cheaper.
Yeah.
Today's part. But I still think it's worth pointing out that creeping up of pricing, because it feels like AMD is more mirroring NVIDIA's price points these days, rather than, pushing price performance forward like it used to. And if you remember with Turing, so the 20 series, NVIDIA moved all its pricing up a stack. So, that's why cards cost so much right now. It used to be you could get a 1080 Ti for $700. Now a Ti card costs $1,000, $1,200. It feels like AMD is mirroring that. And I think it's worth being vigilant in bringing this up, because if these stick with us in the future, it's worth pointing out objectively that, hey, it sucks that we're spending $400 on a 1080p graphics card now.
Yeah. But I also think that it is in all likelihood, hopefully temporary. I do think, in 2 years, 24 months, people will just look back on this and people want to remember it. Just like when the previous inflation from the mining blew everything out, and then suddenly people like, oh, everybody quickly forgets the bad times, it feels like. So I think, but I am concerned that it is bad for PC gaming. It's bad for everybody, because now you got people are like, you know what, I ain't building a PC because it's not worth it. And the more concern to me is the newcomers. You have a new generation, and the parents are like, $400 or $500. Like, the entry level graphics card is $400.
Well,
right?
no,
$500.
That's theoretically $400.
Yeah.
Another thing worth mentioning is that there's no reference card for the 6600 XT. So for the other products in the Radeon 6000 series lineup, AMD offered a reference card and sold it through AMD.com, so it anchored the price a bit. This, which, as is common with lower end launches, although I would argue that $400 is not really lower end, is being handled by AIBs alone. And AMD says that there will be $379 models available from some of those AIBs. But as we can see, I got sent the ROG Strix, and that cost $550. Some of the other reviews that I've seen.
Hold on, the ROG Strix one at MSRP is $550?
$550.
Oh, whoa.
Okay. Yeah.
And I have other ones that are much less. And looking at, I can't talk about those quite yet, but looking at other reviews around the web today, people got all different models for review, and you know the higher pricing is they're all mostly luxurious models. So as we've seen in other GPU launches during this pandemic, yes, there might be one or two MSRP price models at that 379, but expect vendors to instead focus on these higher end models so they can get their slice of the pie too.
Wow.
So, and it's just real hard. This is $550 to say, go buy this over an Xbox. Like it's hard to say that.
Yeah,
Well,
it's going to cost damage.
Yeah, because I mean, I was talking about this with Keith too. I mean, we've talked about this before. Like, I feel like most of us, in you know, if you already have a card, if you're sitting on a 1080, right, classic 1080 or something, you know what, just keep sitting on it, right? Try to weather the storm. I really think this is boning the new people who want to get in on PC gaming, because I think about my first personal system. Obviously, I'm a more of a newcomer. It was I think it was a 2500K with a 470. I think it was like 750. You know, or I'm sorry, it was a 460. So that card that we have back there, the EVGA one. So you know, it's like I was able to get in on PC gaming. I was just doing 1080p with a 460 for $700. Wow, that's crazy to think. If I were to want to be like, hey, you know what, I'm going to get in on the ground floor, build something, nice and simple, like, that's just horrible. That's hard.
Yeah, and the really bad thing
Impossible.
is you're turning a whole generation of people away, possibly. Although sometimes I don't think it really matters for the ones who can twist their parents' arms on it, because I still know that PC gaming is the hottest thing among young people, right? Because they all want to do that. It's not. Where's Elena? Elena's ears will be burning. It's not about consoles for the people who, that's. I really believe that's where the excitement is, but I think we'll feel it in a couple years because people just may be totally turned off of it. So, although
That's the cruelty, right? Because I mentioned this before. My ex works at an elementary school, and she has for a long time. And kids know what I do there, and every now and again I'd get random questions. But since this pandemic began, I've had double-digit amounts of kids being like, "Yo, what should I get to go play Fortnite? I want to play Fortnite with my homies. I want to go play Apex Legend with my homies. What do I need to get that?" And so, these kids are genuinely interested in getting into PC gaming. They're loving it. They're enjoying it. And there is no reasonably cost option unless you perhaps get one of those new 5000 series APUs. And even still, I mean, those are a whole lot more expensive than they used to be. So,
yeah.
Yeah, and I mean, I think I'd say, if there is a saving grace, I would say at least I think we're all in the boat where we have people asking us about, how to get in and stuff like that. And there are people who have upgraded either the 20 series or, got their hands on a 30 series at MSRP if they could. That one of the great things about PC gaming and PC building is that you can repurpose old stuff. So, I mean, if you have the option to buy an older card from, you're like, hey, I upgraded, I have this older card sitting around not doing anything, maybe that's a saving grace where people are doing a lot more like handing down cards or, being able to kind of pass cards on to newer generations. But I mean, yeah, it's hard.
Here's my question though, is because I mean, clearly AMD, as you point out, is following NVIDIA's footsteps on higher pricing, whether that's related to memory and supply and tariffs, all that blah, blah, blah stuff. But how much does this really set it up for Intel to come in and be a hero on graphics? Or, I mean, GDDR6 ain't cheap for Intel either, but you could imagine that, if you're the newcomer that's breaking into something you've never been in before successfully, that this is a good time to make a splash and just, you know what, we're going to be heroes. Get everybody out there. You want to get as much market share as possible. And frankly, it's not a big deal to them on consumer side, right? I mean, definitely for data center, they want their GPUs in there, but I could really see Intel being a huge hero if they have a card that is, say, a 6600 XT or a 3060 competitor for what, $300? Realistic? Can they? Yeah. I mean, actually sell it at $300. So like, here's MSRP and actually have supply. It really, I mean, traditionally, AMD and NVIDIA like to, jump on their competitors. I can't see NVIDIA also wanting to they don't want to let Intel get into to gaming. So they're going to do what they can to crush whatever XE is going to come out at. But the only thing that seems to matter today is price. So
Yep.
Is NVIDIA really going to come down and, flood that price zone where Intel's could play? Or are they just going to, well, we can't do it. It's too rich for our blood, What do you think?
Yeah. I think it's not just price, it's also availability. And I think NVIDIA has inroads there as well. I agree 100% with everything that you're saying. I think there's a very real chance, like Intel is already called Chipzilla, don't forget. And that's just on the CPU side. They make insane amounts of money, insane amount of profits. If they really want to push into consumer GPUs and like be the hero, like you're saying, I would not be shocked to see them subsidize it to some degree, like they've done with marketing in the past for other companies to get a foothold in this market and do come out and charge $300, $330. If this 6600 XT was $300, we'd be having a much different conversation right now. And if Intel is able to do that, I mean, I would not be shocked if they did. I would love it if they did, but they're still like, I would be shocked to see their graphics cards launch for the desktop this year.
Really?
I get the, yeah. They were saying 2021 is the year where it starts to come out. I wouldn't be surprised if we see it in laptops. I wouldn't be surprised if maybe we get an announcement at CES, but just with the way the pandemic's been and everything, I wouldn't be surprised if it gets bumped to early next year. And 6 months from now, 6 months ago, like the world can be in a very different place. So,
yeah. But I would think that's right now is the perfect time to break into the market because people are so desperate to get a graphics card. And in 6 months, if like everything's like, gets closer to normal and people aren't freaked out over getting anything, that's not the time you want to go to fight with NVIDIA, right? If you're Intel, you want to fight now or NVIDIA. What are they going to do? They're running at capacity. What are they? So
yeah.
I would be bummed. I guess I'd be bummed.
Yeah, me too. And especially if that does happen, if the crypto boom busts or whatever, and 6 months from now we could have a bunch of used cards on the market too. So you'd also be fighting against that. So I think that if Intel was going to do something like that, like as soon as possible would be the time, and they very well could be the hero. So I'm very, interested to see how those graphics cards stack up and how much they cost whenever they happen to launch.
Yeah, I really hope it doesn't come out as an OEM only kind of thing. We're like, hey, you know what? We're selling you whatever Lake chip, and we'll sell you these two, and you get a whole deal on everything, and then sort of lock out, sort of like that DIY, because it feels like retail DIY is where they can make the biggest impact to make them, to win the mind share more than. I mean, OEM I know is good for business, but to me, the play is to just like wow people. Like, I mean, could you imagine
if you could only buy a graphics card? That would knock my socks off, and I would love it. And it would be right back to where we were 5 years ago, which is the bummer of this whole conversation. But we talked about this in the past. I think Intel has a big opportunity to bundle graphics cards with chips in pre-built systems and make some sort of marketing blitz around there, offer subsidies in that way. I think that'd be smart for them. That being said, I think that to generate excitement and to get hype, it needs to be DIY.
Yeah.
Like, enthusiasts are not going to get pumped about a product that they can't buy short of buying a $2,000 pre-built desktop. So I think DIY needs to be the tip of that spear.
Do you think people will hold? I know we've kind of shifted from AMD to Intel of a part that we don't even know is going to come out, but I think that to me is the funnest aspect of all this because it's a third player. Do you think reviewers? Do you think the community, if you want to loosely call it that, will be accepting of driver issues or kind of like these weird little, it's new for them, so their games may not be the best immediately. I mean. Do you think people are going to be more forgiving, or they're just going to be just harsh and ignore?
Well, my harsh answer as a critic and a person who personally spends hundreds of dollars buying technology gadgets is you're a multi-billion-dollar company. Sort your stuff out. That's always kind of been my answer when AMD's had some teething issues, NVIDIA's had issues before. You sold me this for hundreds of dollars. You make billions of dollars. If it doesn't work, properly, I'm going to complain about it and I'm going to let you know. And I think that should be the case for any product, any brand, really, anything that you buy.
Yeah, no, and I agree. And, frankly, it's one of those things that people always go like, hey, this thing doesn't run so hot on, XC right now in Tiger Lake, whatever. I get those complaints from some people. So, but I just wonder.
It will take time.
It will take time. And that's kind of like, but, if you're looking at a $300 1080p card versus a $560 1080p card, I may just accept those bugs and hope to God they fix them in time, right? So,
yep. And Intel, I would have faith that something like Intel would fix problems pretty quickly that come up like that, as well as they can. They have a lot of developers.
Yeah, but I think the counterpoint to that I always get is like, well, yeah, but this bug has been in this forever, right? So that's yeah. Adam?
I do have a question from Jerry Spider to get back to the 6600 XT. Did Brad do any PCI 3 versus 4 testing? Hardware Unboxed found up to 25% performance difference in worst case.
Yeah, no, I did not do any of that testing. I did watch that video from Hardware Unboxed, and that is both interesting and worrying. So basically, it has 8 PCIe lanes rather than 16, which on a PCIe 4.0 system like the Ryzen 5900X system I'm testing on, or a modern Intel system, whatever, 8 PCIe lanes, more than enough. But dropping back to an older, PCIe 3.0 system, which isn't really older at all. I would guess that probably 90% of gamers out there are using PCIe 3. The decision to drop down to 8 lanes, as Hardware Unboxed showed, can have performance impact. So that is something I want to dig more into, actually, because Gordon and I were just talking about PCIe lanes yesterday, actually. And I think it's really important to be vigilant for that. And I might actually unretire our 8700K system in the future. If I see that, a particular product is configured with only 8 PCIe lanes, so I can test it on PCIe 3 and PCIe 4, because you can't only focus on the newest hardware. And everyone should go watch that Hardware Unboxed review today. The PCIe testing is towards the end. They have the chapter marks. Definitely check it out.
Did they say what the rationale was for going with 8 lanes?
No, they didn't. It was not mentioned overtly whatsoever.
Huh. Interesting. Because, I've seen that on mobile, but, that's usually done because, this is a 3060 mobile part. The power you're eating to light up all 16 lanes is not worth it. So, but on a desktop part, that kind of is odd,
AMD did it once before, right after Ryzen 3000. Ryzen 3000 came out with PCIe 4, one of their very, very entry-level parts. I forget the part. 5500, RX 5500 only had 8 lanes. Again, for PCIe 4, that's fine, but most people who buy these cards aren't plugging it into a PCIe 4 system. So
I'm sorry. Maybe I'm not understanding why is it a bottleneck on 3 and not on 4? Because it doesn't 3 support 8 lanes already?
Well, it's 8.
It does, but it's much slower.
Yeah. Because
got it. Okay.
16 lanes, because it's half, right? So 16 lanes of Gen 4 is double the bandwidth of 16 lanes of Gen 3. And if you're running Gen 4, 8 lanes, basically the same as a 16 lane Gen 3. And honestly, with this part, probably doesn't make any difference, but it sounds like they're right on the bubble there. So it's going to suck for some.
There could be a good reason to make that decision. Like if you're using half as many PCIe lanes, that leaves those lanes free, so you could put more SSDs and stuff in there in a PCIe 4 system. So it is a bit of a counterbalance there. There are pros and cons to it, but it's obviously a con if you have a PCIe 3 system.
I'm just confused by it because maybe it's just a practical business decision. But you would think on the die the lanes would be the same, but it kind of makes me wonder if this is repurposed from something else or something, and it's just simply that we only did 8 lanes. Mm-hmm. But yeah, that's. Although I have a question though, Brad. Would that mean it would have been better if I bought a Rocket Lake with Gen 4 or a Comet Lake? with Gen 3. Because everybody told me I shouldn't buy Rocket League. Who cares about Gen 4?
You always want
There you go.
you always want the latest and greatest, Gordon. I got another question from Adrian Foray. Said, isn't this going to stifle game development since companies will not push the graphics quality in games forward because of the decline in high/mid end GPU users? I think it's really low end is what they meant.
That's a good question, but I don't think that will occur. One, as Gordon was just saying, PC gaming is more popular than ever despite these crazy hardware prices that we have right now. Two, we've seen, insane price cycles in the past thanks to Bitcoin and stuff like that. And that didn't kill, development of games and game technology. And three, I think a lot of the baseline for modern video games is always the consoles, because consoles have huge install bases. And we have the new generation of consoles with SSDs and modern CPUs in them. And I think that will drive game development forward much more than worrying about the price of a 1080p graphics card.
Yeah, I also would say that I don't think game developers need any reason to stifle the PC if they feel like it. They do really well when you have the best things in the world available for everybody at extremely low prices. They're really good at not taking advantage of it. So I don't think this on balance changes anything. So you can't blame this for it, I guess is what I'm saying.
Dennis Siberian had a question over on Discord. Is the $200 GPU dead?
Right now, I hope not for good. Again, I'm worried that we'll never see a card like the RX 480 and GTX 1060 again. Because even before all these issues, like I said, we saw Turing price creep up, and now we're seeing Radeon match those Turing prices. So we'll see. I think there will still be $200 graphics cards in the future, but they will probably be ones you probably would have spent $100 for in the past.
Well, another follow-up question to this one, Great Mighty Daddy, interesting name, over on Discord said, is there any news on an entry-level RDNA 2/3 or Ampere/Ada Lovelace entry-level desktop GPU on the horizon, specifically one that does not require PCIe power and can run solely off the slot?
Nothing that I've heard. I mean, NVIDIA already rolled out a 3050 Ti and maybe and a 3050 for laptops. So when those come to desktops, the 3050 might not require a power connector. Typically, those 50 class cards don't. But again, the classes mean a lot different. What those class names mean are a lot different now than they have in the past. So we'll see. But the 3050 is probably your best hope if the world gets in a state in a place where NVIDIA even bothers to launch it.
Okay.
Oh, I do want to add that I think $200 graphics cards aren't dead. They're just on a really, really long pause. So I think you could say the same thing about CPUs, but CPU supplies are great. You can go out and buy 5950X all day now at MSRP. So it just takes a while, and hopefully it'll happen within 12 to 24 months,
For a friend of the show, Hardo CP TV says, say hello to your new APUs. That's the new low end.
Yeah, it is, right? That's your $200 GPU.
Right. Another good one. CosMC says, what are your thoughts on the whole bandwidth/cache thing for the 6600 XT for 1440p gaming once direct storage is enabled? Will that make things better?
It is 100% going to depend on the technicalities of how direct storage works. I don't want to jump to any sort of conclusions there. I think it may help, but I doubt that it would fully alleviate the fact that it has a 128-bit bus for 1440p gaming. Infinity Cache is great. The idea of using, Infinity Cache to be able to put smaller buses on there so that you can drive clocks higher, you can use less power. One good thing that I forgot to mention is that this card is insanely power efficient. It offers great performance per watt. It's way better than 3060. It draws less power than the 3060, despite being noticeably, tangibly faster than the 3060. So AMD's doing a lot of really good stuff with RDNA too. So, and Infinity Cache, is a big part of that. That helps enable all that. That was a bit of a tangent. I forgot where I start, but
No
yeah.
worries. And Cause MC has a nice question for you, Gordon. It says, looking at the entry level hardware, would you now buy a console yet, Gordon?
No, it's just because consoles I don't roll with consoles. It's just not my thing. It's just for me it's about the style of games that I play, the way I play. I'm not into mobile gaming is the biggest thing in the world. It's free. I'm not going to do it. I'm not into tablet gaming. I'm not into portable console gaming. Although the Switch, the Steam, God,
Steam
whatever it is.
Deck.
Switch.
Steam Deck looks very impressive. I will tell you, even though it's PC gaming, it's just not a style of thing I frankly care that much about right now. So I don't see it happening. And it's just simply, it's like trying to convince somebody to switch from Mac to PC or PC to Mac. It's just like, if that's your jam, ain't nothing going to get you to move. It's just,
For people like that, like for people like you, like again, I'm gonna go back to what's like a meme for me at this point, but really, it's really great that GeForce Now exists. Because if you're one of those people who are like, I am only interested in PC gaming, and your RX 480 bites the dust because it's 5 years old, you have no chance of getting a graphics card today.
achievement.
Fortunately, there's
unlocked.
stuff like GeForce Now.
mentioned.
I keep mentioning it because that is like I've told friends of mine, like, go play GeForce Now, like get that. I mean, try if you need to get a new router. Like your router you can get a much faster router for $70. That's a lot cheaper than what you will spend on a new graphics card. And maybe just have that hold you over, man.
Yep.
The thing to do then is to basically to build a box with all the RGB integrated graphics. Doesn't mean you don't even need the APU, and then load GeForce Experience or GeForce Now on there. God, that's an old reference. And then you tell your kid, because as long as it has RGB in the fans, this is only little kids. You can fool them. So that's. You ever seen that one where they fool the kid? They think the kid is drinking a soda, but he's actually drinking water that they hid behind it or something like that.
No, but I can see that.
No. Yeah.
So another question for you, Gordon. Boria asks, when the 2080 came out, which was a 1080 Ti but more expensive, Gordon gave it a green light. Is the 6600 XT Gordon's new GPU champ?
If you could buy it for the actual price it's expected, then yeah, sure. Why? I mean, we live in a world where you could buy anything you can buy at MSRP that's graphics related, you should buy. And anybody telling people not to buy this, and you're angry, and I'm on Reddit, don't buy it, you frankly are doing those people, I think, a disservice, in my opinion. It's very much like when 2080 came out. We can go back, rewind the tape, and watch the arguing 2080 versus 1080 Ti. People, they really were absolutely sure that you should do a 1080 Ti and over a 2080. I was like, look, I'm going to put 200 extra bucks into this thing, and I'm going to get future. It's future looking. So the features are now here. 1080 is getting older. 2080 is looking better, frankly. I think everybody would agree that DLSS, you have a little more ray tracing come out, but DLSS is a big deal. A lot of the new features are supported in the newer cores, not supported on older cores. And fundamentally is because you never want to buy, in my book, unless it's an awesome deal, 1080 Ti for $450, $500, that was great. It wasn't that for everybody. I just generally don't want to pay MSRP for 2-year-old technology. That just kills me. And it's like if you could buy a 5700 XT over a 6600 XT, I'm going to say I'd probably go for a 6600 XT if the prices are the same, because
If you play a 1080p.
If you play 1080p, it's hard. And, the prices are weird, but I mean, I'd
go with the 3060 Ti though, right?
Yeah, to me,
20
that's
more bucks?
yeah.
That is
If you could
shaping
get
up
it.
to be the star of this generation for both sides. The 3060 Ti. Even the miners love it, which sucks. But that's really like nailing the sweet spot for me. The 3060 Ti is going to go down as the one to get this generation, I think.
Yeah.
All right. Okay. Yeah. There's we went on longer than I thought it would, but obviously it's a larger discussion than just one single GP review. You know what? We get this question every time, but I thought I might as well ask it just to finish it out before we move on. Brad, why even review this card right now if everything's just so foobar?
Because these cards will be available out in the world. Yes, they're very hard to get. Yes, they cost too much. Yes, people are going to be able to buy them and will be buying them. And as much information that you have to know about these pricey $400, $500, $600 purchases that you're making, the better. And so getting this information out there in the world lets people be more informed buyers when they do get the shot. So it's worth doing.
Okay.
I do have a question though, Brad. Is it worth going from a 1060 class RX 580, vintage card to the 6600 XT? Do you think that'd probably be worth it? If you can get it, say, for a lower, like 380, whatever, not the $500 price.
It would be substantially faster. It would have ray tracing. It would support all the latest features. So it would be a noticeable upgrade. That said, you're going from a card you spent $200 to $250 for to something that is now $400 and still only a 1080p gaming card. So you're not necessarily changing your experience. You're not going from excellent 1080p to making the jump to 1440p. You're just having what's now okay 1080p to making it very fast and good looking still 1080p.
I mean, and that's
if you want the frames, go for it.
And that's a reasonable upgrade for somebody who a 1060 is starting to feel old, especially if they had a 3 gig version, or a 580 is definitely feeling
the 3 gig version
pretty creaky at that point.
Oh.
I think that's pretty reasonable. Yeah, it sucks. It's marked up now, but that's what happens. Markets move. You kind of wish you bought 10 houses in the Bay Area 50 years ago too, but what are you going to do? Just bellyache about that for 25 years? Oh yeah, actually you can. So
it does kind of grind my gears though, how both NVIDIA and AMD keep comparing this card against the 1060, because the 1060 is the most played card on the Steam hardware survey. It kicked butt, $260, right?
It still kicks butt.
It was an excellent 1080p. It still kicks butt. You can still play games on it very well.
Yeah.
And they're sticking to the 60 class naming convention to compare these against the 1060, even though the pricing is now up where 70 class used to be.
Yeah,
so that's marketing, but I still think it's a bit disingenuous.
I think that, to me, I'm fine with it because it ain't when the 1060 came out. I mean, to me, sometimes I think a lot of the reaction, a lot of reviews that are I think they're overly negative. You have to pay the current conditions. It's a terrible situation. And then you're just going to sit there and whine about it. And to me, it's just like, what are you going to do? It's sort of, you should divorce the hardware from the pricing, because who knows what the hell that's going to be. Is it a value? Is it a good upgrade over a 1060? And you could take that 1060, sell it for $250 on eBay. Now you're paying an additional $250 for your new card. You're getting an upgraded performance. I think it sucks that it's not lower in price, but I don't know. It just feels like sometimes people are just, it stinks. It stinks for everybody. It's a bummer, but Dr.
Ian Cuttress, Tech Potato in the chat says, Gordon, who of us could have purchased a Bay Area house 50 years ago? Which of us is over 50?
Well, I would not have been able to, because I don't think you have to be of legal age to be able to do it. But I just think sometimes I just think like, you wish you got in low. I wished I bought Amazon when it was $10 a share, right? So, I mean, to me, sometimes I just feel like, to me, like talking about the value of, say, a high-flying stock, Apple, Amazon, Microsoft, and then to just say like, well, it used to be $5 for a share. Like you should have bought it then, or, and I'm going to buy it when it goes back to that. Okay, good. Because we'll have to wait for the sun to explode before it goes back. I just sometimes, I don't know what that really services sometimes. I get it. It sucks. Yeah, it sucks. But, it's just a terrible situation. I don't know. Maybe it's just me.
Well, you know what else could be a terrible situation, Gordon?
Oh, good thing Ian's here.
Is the thermal, maybe the new thermals on DDR5 could be heating things up. could be a problem for cooling.
Yeah.
What's going on here, Gordon?
So this goes back to a video. Go to Corsair's website, or a YouTube channel, good channel. You can see George there. Man, George has got that mane now. He's like looking like a superhero with that mane. That's hair. So, basically, one of the things George Macris from Corsair said, also PM for memory, they were talking about DDR5, the transition for DDR5 that's coming up. He said, like, hey, Corsair basically has patents on DHX where they basically have designed it years ago to help wick heat out of the PCB into the fancy heat spreaders in the top of the module. And he said that, I should have written this down to quote, I think people are sort of course, internet being the internet, blowing up a little bit. He says, so with DDR5, the voltage regulation moves from the motherboard into the module. This has been well known. And it could potentially increase the thermals on a module, right? More.
Makes sense.
Of course, people then said, "Oh my God, DDR5 is going to be. You're going to need to water cool your DDR5."
Which there are kits out there,
and they've had that for DDR for God's sake, and it's just something people will water cool anything. They'll water cool your keyboard because it's cool to see water cooled. Yes, I know it's liquid, whatever. It's water. It's 99% water, right? Yeah. But I think people sort of blew up the fact that, oh my God, DDR5 is going to be like a small sun inside your. He didn't say that. I think people. But he does say, you move the voltage regulator onto the PCB, it could get hotter. So
that's a statement of fact.
It is a statement of fact, and he doesn't say like, oh my God, you're going to want our stuff because it's so much better because we handled this years ago. He didn't even say that, but he did say like. Well, we go at the technology; it keeps it cooler.
Yeah, they did talk about their technology, their systems for keeping it cool.
Yeah, but he didn't definitively say like, "Oh, these DDR5 modules, you're going to need our full, custom liquid cooling to keep." So, but it will get hotter. No, I would not be surprised because now you have the voltage regulators in the module, so it'll get cooler. Or it'll get hotter. So how hot it will get, I think, will depend obviously on the module, the design. But I do think there's a little bit of an overreaction to the fact that it will get hotter. You're going to hope that the module makers are going to, do their homework and make sure, these things don't overheat, and it can potentially cause problems if you heat up modules too much. Although I would argue, because when you mentioned this, I was saying, DDR5 will actually run harder than previous versions. I was like, that's good because I've always felt for a long time that the fancification of modules, this is like it felt a little excessive sometimes, and I know a lot of it's just for pieces of flair because people want their modules to look cool, but I don't know if necessarily heat was so out of control that it was an issue for all consumers, especially the ones, running the ones without any heat spreaders, right? So,
yep.
Although I think the thing that's kind of missed, and this is really good. I don't know, Ian here, Dr. Ian Kutchers is in the chat, but
he does, and he has some thoughts on this stuff.
He has an excellent article, Insights into DDR5 Subtimings, over in AnandTech, where he also works. Go read that. I encourage you to, because it's really great stuff over latency and clocks and all that stuff. But there's a line that I thought was really interesting, is like, he points out that, so module makers, for essentially, they bin out the chips, they solder them to a module, they sell them to you, fairly commodity. Yeah, there's differences in how they bin them and all that stuff, and you get to really, really high screen modules that are super fast, super low latency. But they've been, for a lot of the part, just very commodity. Didn't really make that much difference, especially if you're going to run pretty loose timings and lower clocks. But now that you move the voltage regulator into the module, now it comes like, our special sauce matters a little more now because we're cooling it better. So you couldn't really... It didn't really make a difference that much, whether it was Corsair or Guile or, whatever. Yeah, it did, but not as much. But it'll be interesting if they can really differentiate themselves now, and especially for, high clocked or low latency modules. And I also think the one thing that's kind of like, I didn't even think about this. Like, you now have voltage regulator, you now have to deal with heat, and on those enthusiast modules, they may get significantly more expensive. I think that's the one thing that I didn't hear said. So I kind of wonder if it's going to get pricier for DDR5 modules when they come out.
Yep. I agree with all of that, especially because DDR5. It's whenever there's a new DDR generation that comes out, the first modules are always more expensive.
Yeah,
and I'm waiting to see how long that'll stick because I actually have the same thoughts that you have surrounding all this.
Yeah, and I'd love to hear what Ian has to say because Ian knows what he's talking about. Again, go read Insights into DDR5 Subatomics and on Tech.
So yeah, his notes are that standard DDR memory slots. His notes, as in Dr. Ian Cuttress, Tech Potato, says standard DDR memory slots are rated for 18 watts. This has been the case for DDR3, 4, 5, maxing a few watts. The only thing that went 18 watts high is Optane DCP-MM first gen. Just make sure that you have sufficient airflow in the case. Will make you pay more attention to what CPU cooler you use. Perhaps the socket should be rotated to ensure front to back cooling and streamline the memory. I know you're a fan of that.
I agree with you, Ian. I was just thinking, one of the problems with RAM is it acts like this gigantic sail. So you have the airflow. This is a Gamer's Nexus reference. Airflow from front of case, comes in case, smashes into your gigantic, big-ass memory module that you just thought was cool because it was bigger. Mm-hmm. So now you have this great big impediment to your memory or airflow in your case. Why don't we, besides rotating the CPU, Ian, we take the memory and we rotate it so it goes with the airflow. So now the air from the front of your Gamer's Nexus case comes in, flows over the module, aiding the cooling to it out the back of the machine. And, while we're doing that, let's take the Southbridge chip, which is all the way down here on your motherboard, and then all of the wires from that run up to your motherboard, make this journey up to the ports in the back. Why don't we take that Southbridge chip and move it up closer to the back? Because that's where the I/O goes. You're not going to the front. What in the hell? What do you think?
This sounds like it's been done before.
No, never been done before. I think it'd be great to do a new standard like that. Yeah. We rotate the memory, we move the PCH up closer to the back. I think everybody would be behind that. You got to buy a new case. But,
No, I don't want to get rid of my case. I love my case.
I think that most likely chance of that happening anytime soon comes from Apple. Like with that funky custom, board they made with the Mac Pro.
Yeah.
Those are all genius thoughts, though.
What occurs to me? There's really no reason you can't, well, I guess because of the keep out zones, but I was reading the ATX spec and it really doesn't. It's pretty damn loose, but people just do the same things. They always put the audio chip down in the lower left where Intel has recommended. They put everything where Intel's recommended. Can't we just redesign it and move it around?
Dr. Ian Cuttress says we should just go to DDR stacked vertically on a single daughter board. DDR is trash. Open CAPI memory interface (OMI) is the future.
Yes, for consumers. But back to DDR5. I think actually the other thing I want to bring out is they didn't say, but of course it's like, and you'll have DDR5 by the end of this year, later this year. It's already August, but clearly, again, more proof that they think it's going to come out. If the vendors are talking about it, we will definitely be getting DDR5 memory controllers coming out. So clearly, Alder Lake is going to come out this year. So not like it's delayed or something. Maybe. I guess we wouldn't expect a new Zen part with it. That'll be next year, I think, officially.
Yeah. CES reveal. That's my guess. Just like they've been doing.
I think we're going to see the Vcache though, right? They talk about Vcache. They're going to want something. Yeah. They're going to want. It's modern marketing is about raining on other people's parades. So they're going to want to try to rain on Alder Lake, depending on where that falls in. So, and it will be, and I've done this. I've been on this merry-go-round enough. I will say that people will like, DDR5 is not worth it at all. Look at this. The latency is too bad. It's so expensive. With Zen, with the Vcache, and those really high clock DDR4 modules, it's so much better. DDR5 sucks, is what the narrative will come out at for about, I don't know, a couple months, you think? No? Nobody agrees?
Expensive.
Yeah, yeah. People will complain about the expense, but it's always been expensive. That's the other thing too. Is like it's always been expensive. So
Also, somebody in the chat points out that I'm just going to say their name as it's written. Why is there poop in my mouth? That's their name. It said it sucks
Fair
at DD.
question.
Yeah,
that's not a handle that was taken by most people.
it says it sucks that DDR technology is not backwards compatible. Why is it not backwards compatible, Gordon?
Oh, because there's a conspiracy to make you buy stuff.
Damn.
DDR5, in fact, is the same as DDR4, which is the same as DDR.
Just hotter.
They just added a number to it. No, I'm making that up. Obviously, if you're buying into this, it's just because it's newer. There are quite a bit of differences. Again, you have the voltage regulator inside. There's onboard internal ECC. There's sub channels with it now. Also, you're going to go from max of 32 gigs for a module to a max of 128 gigs, I guess. So it'll get pretty big, right? So I would not expect it to be the same, but memory transitions are always painful. Is the one thing I've learned is they're always painful with pricing and their overlap with performance. I still think when we had Ian on, he felt that Intel is against letting people making combo boards. I kind of think they need to let people make combo boards because it would help. It would help the transition in a lot of ways because people would feel comfortable later on going to DDR5, even though it may make 0% sense and actually may hurt your performance. But the more people you can get to embrace a new memory standard means you sell more of it, which means it brings the prices down, which means it becomes normal faster for everybody.
Also, we have a question from Dave Weldon. Well, he asked this to Dr. Ian Kudris, but I'm asking it here. Why does this stuff need to keep getting hotter? Shouldn't the industry be aiming to reduce power use and heat?
Well, you're simply relocating the heat, if you think about it, because the voltage regulators that were on the motherboard go into the module. So I'm kind of interested to whether that sort of aids the whole argument for ATX 12VO too, because ATX 12VO, if you don't know, is Intel's new spec to eliminate the 3, 3, and 5 volt rails, and part of that because motherboards still need 5.5 and 5 and 3.3 voltage is to put that on the motherboard. So instead of being in the power supply and using up more efficiency in idle, you now move it into the motherboard. And if it's not even it's like everybody wants to pass the buck around, like, oh, you know what? We'll let the memory modules handle the regulation because now we don't have to do it. We don't have to pay for that part. It's their problem. It's not our problem. So.
Also, James Pryor's in the chat says,
James, I still got that cup you gave me, man.
Said, lower power is not the same as lower heat.
Yeah, that's true too.
So, yeah, so I guess we'll see. Somebody else in the chat where to go. Mohammed Abdur is asking, how many months do we have to wait to build a PC with DDR5? What do you think? This year?
Well, I'm Alder Lake will be a go with it. So, I mean, definitely already this year. And the fact that Corsair and other vendors have introduced modules and they're talking about it and they're still saying it's on schedule. So the question is, when will Intel go with Alder Lake launch? I have no idea. But, typically that's, holiday. So I would think, I don't know, because, it is very hard for everybody to get they have to make sure that everything works, which is simply harder to do today because not everybody's back in their cubicle. So what's a good time to launch this? I mean, would you really push it to... You can't say it's launched if it's CES. So that doesn't count.
Won't be surprised if they've done ones in the past in the September, October kind of time frame. And then had limited availability of stock for a couple of months. And I wouldn't be surprised if that's the case here.
Yeah, because November's too late.
Yeah, it's too late.
September feels like a good month to do it. Late September, early October, maybe. I'm with you on that. So yeah, I would say you will see people with review parts hopefully by then, and then Whether you can build those or not just depends on how much money you have. Because I potentially you might be able to get the parts. So
It'll be sweet if they double dip and the Z desktop graphics cards indeed come out around the same time in big October Blitz or something like that.
That'd be a big fall.
yeah, no, really. I mean, you just kind of that's why I'm really looking forward to XE graphics just because because it's different, right? We sort of like green punch red, red punch green, back and forth, and then now we sort of have blue added to punching people, or they're both kind of like a three-way punching match. So that'll be. I'm really looking forward to that because we could use a shakeup, right? I mean,
Royal Rumble.
I mean, it's funny because I know people are like think I'm upset about M1, but I think M1's awesome because it just makes things interesting. It gets pretty boring sometimes, right? So
Competition is good, and one competitor doing better pushes all competitors to do better. So
yeah.
yeah.
Dr. Ian Cuttress, his prediction: November paper launch with K SKUs, available December, March with the rest of the stack.
That sounds right.
A couple
Yeah.
questions. Total Shodden is asking, do you think DDR5 will help IGP/APU performance? Because we know
Very,
that
it should.
faster. Yeah.
I think it's one of those things where I think there's a really odd disconnect with how people use and the intended customers for IGP APU is if you're going to run a system and then I'm going to get a big bonus out of the DDR5, like you are basically buying into your premium platform, bleeding edge launch, and you're going to run integrated graphics. I just don't think it makes any sense. You would want a better performing discrete graphics. So I would think it would help. I would expect it to. At the same time, that makes zero sense for most people. So
It would be more practical in due time,
hopefully,
like anytime soon. Yeah.
yep.
Also, another one from Pedro Acura said, any reason why the console seems to have DDR5 RAM first? The PC in those terms isn't always it's always a step backward, like the early consoles already having DDR5.
I honestly didn't pay too close attention to the consoles, but generally it's perfectly fine if you don't have to worry about it. It's the old go to lunch with everybody with all your coworkers. You sit around, you talk about it for 50 minutes, and then lunch is almost over because nobody can make a decision on what fast food restaurant to go to for lunch. If you just simply say, hey, I'm going to McDonald's, the rest of y'all I don't care what you do. You have McDonald's, you eat it. Sony and Microsoft, and Apple, frankly, the same reason that Apple's done so well, they can be out of spec if they want. Oftentimes Apple will introduce something and they're like, oh, you're still working on the rule by committee and more meetings and stuff. We're just going to do it and market it already and beat you to marketing with it. They don't have to worry about it. Oh, you actually are using this memory is not really going to work. Who cares? Because we go to Micron or Samsung or whoever buying the modules for it, and we just say we want this part for the next 5 years at this price for this many pieces. Doesn't matter.
Also, it's not apples to oranges because actually the newest consoles are on DDR6, but that's because it's different. It's not the same kind
I
of.
thought it was GDDR6, isn't it?
Yeah. So it's it's not the same thing as what we have on the PC side.
Yeah.
So
I mean,
it's different.
It's a closed system that they don't really care about meeting industry standards, and frankly, it's better for them too because to do it their way is better for the way they do it. As long as you want to buy one piece of hardware forever.
Yep. Okay. I guess we will continue to watch this. Actually, in our weekly news roundup at the end of I guess it was Sunday now. Keith had a nice little roundup on this too, and that's where the link is for the Corsair video. You should go watch that. Anyway, you want to get to some questions?
Sure.
All right, then I will switch over to the questions. If you want to get your question in, tag me in the chat right now, or if you're watching this after the fact or listening after the fact, go over to our Discord. We have a full nerd question channel in there. You can drop it in anytime, and hopefully I'll read it on the show. So we got a $30 super chat a little bit ago from Mike Quinton. Thank you so much for the $30. I really appreciate it. Said, with TPM 2.0, do I still need malware protection software inside their operating system?
No, you don't. You don't need anything. In fact, it's the most secure operating system ever. You don't need any kind of anti-malware scanning. Oh, wait, that's the other product that it pretends to tell you. Yes, you will continue to need security. I think the saying security experts say is security is not a product. It is a process. So yes, you will, even though you have TPM and you have all the memory isolation and core isolation and secure boot and all this stuff, somebody will always be trying to take advantage of it. So you should do everything you can to mitigate those odds as much as possible. And, running, frankly, Microsoft's onboard stuff has been really good. The free stuff is really good, but you will continue to need, other measures. You can't just simply go, oh, it's all safe inside my walled prison and it's nothing can hurt me. That's never going to happen.
Well,
it's about having layers. The more layers, better.
Yep. And what TPM protects against is different than what malware protects against on the software side. So when we're talking about layers, we're saying, hey, there's different kinds of attacks. There's different ways to protect it. TPM 2.0 does not be the end all or the be all end all. It's just one part of the chain that should be secure. So, okay. Another question from the OS Maxwell. Any Ryzen 6000 CPUs planned for 2021 Q4 or 2022?
I'm sure 2022.
Yeah, and I still think
I'm sure. I don't think we're going to see him Q4 this year, unless you're talking about the fiscal year, which is different. But
do you think though that do you think they're going to do the Vcache versions of Zen 3 this year? I think they will.
I think that'll be the Alder Lake counterpunch.
Yeah.
Okay. Adak DK says, does Intel's next gen, I'm not going to call it Big Little, I'm going to call it hybrid architecture, will it have as many struggles as most new architectures have had in the past? How much do you think they're going to struggle with that, Gordon?
Yeah, no, it'll be a change, right? It looks like you'll need Windows 11 to fully exploit it, and I think there will be teething pains, as there always is. So, how much that is, I don't know. It's interesting because I think everybody thinks like you sort of like they start building something. This would be a great discussion to have with Ian one day. People sort of think like they build something, and then like oh they zigged. We need to zag. They can make immediate changes, and a lot of times, especially looking at like the Rocket Lake launch, they launched that in a vacuum. They had no idea. You sort of like it goes up into space, sort of comes back into a different world, just like Planet of the Apes, and you can't really. There's really not that much they can do. So the short answer is it's. I'm sure there will be weaknesses to it. So.
I agree 100%. There will be teething pains. There always are. But, like you said, Windows 11 looks like it's added in a bunch of support for it. And Windows actually, they support ARM chips. Like since Windows RT, Microsoft's been working on it. So between Microsoft working on it on, the software front and Intel's obviously been working on it on its front, hopefully they won't be too bad, but I totally expect there will be at least some, especially if you're still on Windows 10.
Yeah. Here's a question we're Gordon and I are going to talk about a little bit later in a separate video from J-Star Productions. Wouldn't the 5800X be a better gaming CPU versus the 5900X since it's a single CCX, meaning lower memory latency? Gordon?
I think in theory, you would think it would be, but this is the thing that AMD has talked about as well. It's like, well, no, actually, you would think it would be, and maybe there are a few things where it is better, but they've looked at enough of it to the clocks, the core count, where the cache is enough to make it still faster than a 5800X. And they same thing, like they said, like 5950X. Those you would think like, wow, more cores, maybe it's slower, but it was actually faster because it got the best clocks. It was the best cores. It was a high spin part. So yeah, you would think that, but no, because they didn't market it in the same way.
Yeah, there's like technologically it makes sense, but sometimes people forget that the raw underlying technology and the actual product that is made using all the various technologies aren't always the same. So like you're saying, they can compensate with binning and with more cache and stuff like that. So that's just always something to keep in mind because people get, caught up in RDNA architecture and NPR architecture. And that stuff does matter, but product decisions and technology decisions are not always totally varied.
Okay. Back to hybrid CPUs. Adrian Foray, that's what I'm going to call it. How will benchmarking change with hybrid CPUs? What do you, how are you going to change the way you once again need to review these CPUs?
I think it shouldn't change that much for anybody. Whenever a vendor pushes like a certain aspect of something, you should explore it, but it should still be the same tools we already use, which is gaming and rendering, video, encoding, all that stuff. So I think it shouldn't change that much. But as I think we talked about before, it does feel like it could be like you could almost see it. I know that's not how you design CPUs, but you could sort of see this as a cynical way to like, let's win the Cinebench wars and 3D rendering wars that all reviewers are so overly focused on, and everybody on Reddit, even though frankly most people aren't doing 3D modeling. So if you're faster and sort of like the cool benchmarks, bigger bar better, then they should technically win then, right? I mean, it should be. If reviewers came out and they said like, yeah, Alder Lake's faster than 5950X in Cinebench, but I don't care about Cinebench. Nobody's doing 3D rendering. I think that would be really wrong of people to do, especially if they've like so overly fixated on it before. But yeah, clearly being better at a 3D rendering benchmark is not the most valuable thing in the world. I think I've said before to people who aren't doing it, but you can't just suddenly change things because, wow, actually, Alder Lake with this hybrid approach is actually better, right? You can't suddenly like, oh, I don't care about that. I mean, I do wonder because, I mean, if you suddenly see, I guess the thing is I say that because I feel like I have been very fair in saying, yeah, 3D rendering is awesome with the core count that Ryzen has. And if that's what you do, or you do these things where you need all those cores, this is like just awesome. But I just would hope people are not going to suddenly now suddenly see the light that, oh, I went higher clocks on more cores, and that's where it matters. That single lightly threaded thing. I don't know. I don't think it should change for anybody, and I would hope it wouldn't, just because your jersey and that you've been arguing for, that you're wearing, if that changes and you now suddenly change your tune in Reddit, that would be wrong.
Friend of the show, Francois. I don't know how to say his last name. How do you say it?
I'm gonna mangle too. Pidnoel. Pidnoel.
Sorry. Said big little / hybrid is dead in 5 years. That's their guess.
I mean, it's possible, right? 5 years is pretty long. I mean, maybe it's just that it goes nowhere. I'm still, frankly, I don't get it. That's why when I sort of lean into like, it's a great way to get bigger bars better, but I don't know, but who knows? Maybe this is I don't know. It's well beyond me how it all plays out, but I don't understand it. So who knows?
Okay. Moving on, I got a good question for you, Brad. This was actually brought up in our last PC build last month. Pedro Akura has an RTX 3070 that requires two 8-pin connectors, but he's powering it off of one PCIe power connector, so it's one of those ones that has the two 8-pin attached to one cable. Is he missing performance by going off of the same cable, or should he do two separate 8-pin cables?
You are not missing performance whatsoever. If you might lose like a frame, if that. I've done a bunch of testing in the past on my own rig to validate that yes or no, just so I know whether or not to look out for that while testing GPUs. I think it was Jay's 2 cents, who actually did a whole video also doing that. So if you Google that, you can watch that and see his results. Depending on the rating of your power supply, the thing I would be most worried about is the RTX 3070's power spikes. Because remember, when the Ampere first came out, there was all the talk about how it has much higher peaks, like it'll hit a peak that's much higher every now and again. So with this generation, I've actually made a point of using 2 cables just so it goes to different rails and stuff. But if your card's holding out fine in that respect, you haven't seen any weird performance issues, like, no, you're good. It's not going to affect frame rates whatsoever. And 3070, I think, is low enough down the totem pole. The issues with the more power, with the power spikes, tended to be in the 3080 and 3090. So I think you're golden.
Okay. They follow up and say they have a Seasonic 640 watt 80 gold. So
Yeah, it's a good power supply brand.
Yeah.
Yep. Okay.
Yeah, don't sweat it. You can use that. That's why they exist.
Okay. Here's we'll get a couple from Discord. Dr. Ian Cuttress is also on our Discord. Put a comment in and said, "Did Gordon/Brad see that Intel is taking on some debt to fund Gelsinger's fab expansion plans? Any thoughts? How does Gordon think Pat reconciles Intel's own manufacturing with the need to remain competitive in end-user chips by using TSMC?"
That was a huge, right? It was like a $60 billion buy-in. Is that the one? And they're saying it's going to be this new fab will be the size of a city. If you're talking about that one, I think clearly when you're the United States government and you are looking to own your own supply chains, that having a large, well-known entity that you've dealt with for a long time, having fabs in the United States matters. So I think that's sort of an out. You're seeing that basically happen. I think it's probably, who knows, a pretty smart move for 10 years from now, because it's people don't want to go through this whole supply chain thing again. So I think it's probably going to be a smart move in the end.
Yeah, I agree. It's a good long-term thing. Could be a good long-term thing.
Well,
I think,
the US
they're obviously,
too.
Yeah, the government looking into doing all that makes a big difference to getting those, tax subsidies. Also, they just, they're using the foundry as their own business. So if they do want to be competitive with TSMC as a foundry business going forward, they're going to have to invest in the company. And Pat Gelsinger is, he's from the old school Intel days, and, he's saying all the right things in public, but I bet you I would not be surprised if he has hey man, we're Intel, we're going to put our engineers on it, we're going to put our minds to it, and we're going to be the best at this in 5 years. We're going to make a plan and we're going to execute it. And I wouldn't be surprised if that sort of thinking plays into the idea of, taking all that debt to improve the foundry business.
Okay. Liquid R over on Discord asks, Gordon's comment about the fanification of modules made me think, do heat spreaders serve more than a function and aesthetic purpose? Do they serve an unintended psychological purpose that makes them more approachable for consumers as a component?
Yeah, people.
I mean, it has RGB.
Like
if it has RGB on it,
RGB works wonders. I mean, frankly, again, you could have an empty box running GeForce Now. As long as it had the RGB lights in there, that's all most kids care about, to be honest. And I know that it makes people angry or whatever, but I can't take any joy away from those people. And that's why I sort of like half jokingly like, oh, DDR5 may actually, all the fancy heat sinks may actually do something now. The only thing they really did before, it felt like, except for those extreme people on the extremes, is just make you feel better, right? Mm-hmm. But that's worth it. Do I really need a spoiler on a Honda Civic? I mean, yeah, maybe if I dropped that Honda Civic off a cliff, that spoiler would actually act as an airfoil, but people buy shoes because of a swoop on it. They buy clothes because of a certain color. They buy, and that's how our society functions. So
That's just people in general. I mean, if you have the option between a functional but ugly thing and a functional but pretty thing, most people are gonna, buy a nice looking thing over something that doesn't look nice.
certain people,
It
Brad.
depends on, yeah, a lot of people, let's say, especially, it doesn't add that much cost. So
No, I was gonna say some people who like it doesn't matter. You could wear that worn out oversized T-shirt and it doesn't. What's it gonna matter? And my
tell you what,
example is me. I don't care.
I need a heat spreader for my shirt. I am sweating through this thing on YouTube.
Oh wow. No, that's warbles. It's the JPEG compression or
Yeah, blocking. Anyway,
Is
okay. All right. A couple more. Here we go. To follow up on that, I don't know how to say it. Looking at the past, Intel has done anti-competitive behavior against its competitors. Now we're hearing rumor that Intel will be using one of TMC's best nodes to build some of its chips. The question is, Intel really need TSMC to build their chips, or are they only doing it to snatch Apple and AMD quota in this chip shortage situation to limit their production?
I think Intel, it's interesting that Intel has long been a bigger customer of TSMC than, I'm not a nerd, I'm not a fab nerd, but I think Intel has been a customer of TSMC, a larger customer than AMD has been for a long time. I do know your concerns because this takes capacity away from others, but I can tell you it's not going to hurt Apple because Apple could basically buy that part of the globe easily, like with the change it finds in its pockets. So it's not going to hurt Apple. People get a little too hung up on things were done decades ago that there was enforcement over. And I generally sort of feel like unless you got some real charges right now, if you had a real charge, like if anyone actually in the industry had real allegations and they could call up the people who enforce everything and there could be some hot water. So I think that's what you should do, not just simply say like, well, KD went over the line in that one game, so clearly that's something I'm going to hold against the Warriors for the next 40 years or something like that. It's just like, that's a great scene too. If you ever see it, that there's in the finals, Kevin Durant has got the ball. It's like, there's like whatever, 10 seconds left. He dribbles he might as well like dribble up the stairs into the Coliseum, got a hot dog, dribbled back down. It wasn't a foul. So it's one of the things that everybody brings up. So. Yeah, no.
Yeah, I'm sure if that happens, Intel would not be sad about it. Like, hey, we're paying more to get this capacity. Now you have less. Oh, that's great. But they're doing this because they feel that's the best move for them as a company right now.
And if you're an Intel hater, I don't think it's really unfair, or I don't think it's really fair for you to say like, you know what, Intel should just have TSMC make their parts because you suck. You just suck. Oh, you're having TSMC make your parts? You're doing that to hurt them. It's like, well, yeah. Okay.
Okay, a couple more, then we'll get out of here. But first, we have a comment from Master Procrastinator. Said, just wanted to say thanks to Brad, Gordon, and Elena. I'll tell her later. Back in February, I asked for advice on a GPU upgrade, and I followed it to the letter. I stuck with my GTX 1070 and waited until I could buy one at MSRP, or a new one at MSRP. I joined a stock alert server and got lucky a few days ago, acted quickly when I got an alert, and secured a new RTX 3080 at MSRP. So,
wow.
Yes.
Boom.
They do exist.
There we
Excellent.
go.
Way to go. Congratulations, man. That's going to be a heck of an upgrade. Have fun with that.
Nice. And then we got a question in the chat from Adrian Foray again. Great questions today. How do you think EVGA's conversation went when they told Jensen and NVIDIA that they were going to make AMD motherboards?
Whatever.
Yeah, I don't think NVIDIA would honestly care because that's just simply making a AM4 motherboard. AMD and NVIDIA actually work together on some of these things. Believe it or not, they do talk to each other. So I don't see that's an issue. I'm sure Intel wasn't happy about it, but I think they understand the situation everybody's in right now because that's where the excitement is. It has been. So, yeah, I mean, you sometimes the companies do this because they want to try to twist out a better deal or something too, right? So,
I like you said, AMD and Nvidia work together. Like one of the first gen Ryzen demos I saw were on a GeForce system, not a Radeon system, because GeForce was the best, graphics available at the time. They had no 6900 XT style things. So to show off Ryzen to the press, they were using GeForce cards. They're different divisions. They do different things. So.
Okay.
Yeah,
if they start making Radeon graphics cards,
that would be a different conversation, I think. So.
All right, last one, friend of the show, VC Chester's asking, there is a lot of hate for Molex connectors, but I remember a time when they were good. Am I just imagining things, and they were always sloppy and a pain to connect?
No, they were terrible. They were absolutely horrible. And then they were always so like, for Molex, for people who don't remember, that's what you used to hook up your optical drive with. You had the two corners cut out. Then you'd have the 4 fingers that would be it. And then every single Molex connector was always so poorly designed and implemented that, a couple of fingers would be out of alignment. And you would jam the thing in, it would never fit. And then you have to go in there and try to straighten it out. I've actually shorted things out because it is actually possible to short things out with those things. It was a terrible, terrible thing.
I can't wait till they're all the way gone enough that I don't even get those connectors in the PSU boxes anymore. Like every time I see those PSU boxes, I'm like, this should be available as an option for me to buy soon. I get why they still include them, but I'm ready to be beyond it.
Yeah, I think that they have to do it because if you don't have, legacy support, that turns into, and if you have like things that, hey, we'll send you for free, right? Mm-hmm. It's like, that's fine. I'm returning to the store right now. And they end up beating a return because they need it right now. Yeah. And they'll just return it and buy one that has it. So, and there's still a lot of people running optical drives and other things that hook up to Molex fans and the like. So,
nice. Okay. Yeah. Let's. That's it for today. Let's get out of here. I will say, Ozo Rojo. I think if I'm saying it right. What does it take to become a friend of the show? Opens wallet. Well, you don't need to do that. You are a friend of the show. Ozo Rojo, you are a friend of the show. Glad to have you here. So
that's not true, Adam. I saw somebody put a super chat in there earlier. Didn't even get read.
What? Who? Oh no!
I have no idea who it is. I just saw it scroll up.
The problem is they're not a friend of the show.
No,
but you know what?
That person definitely is not.
I'm going to read it anyway. They just gave $5. That's it. Come on, no friend of mine.
Associate of the show.
Yeah, geez. Says it's from a Gordon Ung. Says
sucks.
Just WTF is that belt for? Best Covenant movie? But that movie stunk. No, this belt is this is the full nerd I'm right belt. As of right now, Adam's right.
What are the rules on that?
I don't know. Who knows?
Are y'all gonna send it to me after I dominate the paper eating competition again?
Yeah,
just wondering.
So the idea, I will say, the idea is that this belt will continue to be passed around as we have discussions and whatnot. So, like any true pro wrestling, it'll be passed around.
So all I have to do is goad Elena into saying Star Trek, the motion picture, is better than The Wrath of Khan. That's all I have to do.
I mean, what? I think we have to have an honest discussion about what makes things better, what doesn't.
I guess I need to test 2080 versus 1080 Ti now. Then
there you go. Yeah, 2080 non-super.
Yeah, okay. Yeah. I'll save it.
All right, let's get out of here, Gordon. Ready for lunch.
Check back next week for your Fix It PC Talk on the Full Nerd. For audio listeners, oh boy, I need some water. For audio listeners, subscribe to us on iTunes, Google Play, Spotify, or Stitcher. Send questions and comments to thefullnerd@pcworld.com. Also, if you're on one of the services, please leave a review. Every time you do, that belt gets passed to someone who really actually deserves it. Thanks for coming. I'm Gordon Ung with Brad Charkis.
Adios, show.
And Adam Patrick Murray is going to hit the off switch.
I'm right. Bye.
Prometheus.